Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for coming. I actually just want to switch my badge out with one of yours and eat that food. That looks delicious. You guys get treated real well here. That's nice. So we have about a 2-hour lecture that we're going to cram into 45 minutes because I know some people have to clock back in and whatnot. And if you have to leave before everything's said and done, that's okay. No offense taken. No problem. So I am a doctor, first of all. And so a lot of people will come up to me. This is not on the topic of what we're going to talk about. And I say, what do you think of healthcare reform? And I'll just put this out there. I think it's a very noble, worthwhile cause to get people affordable quality healthcare coverage, okay? But the words, is this? Not set up yet? And I use Twitter a lot. So I'm not really shy about sharing my opinions and tweeting the president and whatnot. So just was going to start off with a little bit of how that's been going. So the scariest words to me are, what? We have a good idea, but we're from the government and we're here to help, okay? Not really sure how often that has worked out really, really well, but so from time to time I will tweet my displeasure to Washington. Is that working? Oh, okay. No, it's okay. I can do it. And especially with, sometimes it seems like promises get made that don't get kept. I'll express my displeasure, and I will say, I don't think that's cool. Like, you guys broke something. You guys better fix it in the process of trying to build something. So I don't always get a tweet back from the President of the United States. The last time was his staffer was tweeting me back and said, he's in a meeting right now, but he wants you to know that your complaints have been heard and that he wanted to reply to you during his meeting. And so that was what I got. I'm kidding, of course. Anyway, weight management doesn't have to be difficult or complicated. What I find is that people who struggle because they get tethered in the trees instead of sticking with looking at the forest. So you can see one of my common complaints is, why does it take 6 weeks to lose 5 pounds but only 1 day to gain it all back, right? I think we've all been there. And I think Thanksgiving sometimes is that day where we gain it all back. So it's timely that we're getting started. So, I like to ask, but we don't really have time for everybody to give their input. Why you're here today, besides the free food, which looks great, and what you hope to gain from attending today. Because what I really want is, I want you to walk out of here with confidence. The confidence to say, I know how to eat healthy and maintain a healthy weight and a healthy diet, both for myself and for my family, okay? So people come in on various measures in terms of the scale of confidence, and then I'll ask them again at the end of the lecture usually, where are you? So what we're going to talk about first is kind of an objective measure of health. We'll put it like that. It's called body mass index. It's a height to weight ratio. Normal is 18 to 25. Overweight is 25 to 30. And then the O word, and I never, ever, ever call any of my patients this, even if they meet the criteria. I just say, yeah, you're a little bit heavy, and they don't mind that so much. The O word, obesity, starts at 30, body mass index at 30. And that's where a lot of the health problems really start to take off. So that's a chart. It's very simple to compute your body mass index. In fact, you all have smartphones now. You could probably compute it while you're sitting there. So this disease is rapidly spreading and getting worse, not better. Currently, 1/3 of the adults in this country are obese. Okay? 15 years ago, that was only 19%. So what's happening is every 15 to 20 years, we're doubling our obesity rates in this country, where they think by 2030 it's going to be 1 out of 2 adults in this country will be obese. Okay? 1/3 or less of adults in this country are able to maintain a healthy body weight. And sadly, it's starting younger and younger. It's not just adults. We're not here for pediatric nutrition, but 30% of kids now are overweight or obese versus just 5% when I was growing up in the 70s. So Kaiser Permanente, we have a large population in Southern California, really no different, surprisingly, than the rest of the country. About 78% of men and 66% of women not at the healthiest body weight for their height. So we spied on UCI from the Snowden files, right? According to Wikipedia, no, I'm kidding, it's not Wikipedia. So UCI, Kaiser members, what we found is that about 1/3 are overweight and about 1/3 are obese. So kind of surprising, again, in an academic institution that there's a lot of knowledge floating around, but maybe not a lot of the right support structure for people to be successful with managing their weight. So again, we're short on time. Why is obesity a disease? I've never really met anybody come to see me for cosmetic reasons. You might think, oh, people come in, they just want to lose weight so they look better. Actually, almost everybody I meet in my practice is suffering from something, whether their weight causes them pain, whether they've been told they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, whether they have high blood pressure, they take a bunch of medications they don't want to take, and it can all be traced back to their body weight in a lot of cases. So the 5 leading causes of death in this country all have a contribution from obesity, and the one that's the most surprising is cancer. About 1/3 of the cancers in the United States of America are directly attributable back to a modifiable risk factor called obesity. There's another third that's 25–30% from smoking, and then there's another third. But imagine if we could cut the rate of cancer in this country by 33% because we could motivate people to get and stay healthy. So where did this cutoff for what qualifies as obese come from? Did it just come from basically people wanting to punish people who got to a certain weight? Well, actually, it's from the actuarial tables of where health risks become important in people's health. I know this is very, very difficult to see, but this is age-related mortality, another fancy word for death. In men, body mass index, they're about 30. You can see the curve is relatively flat, but once it hits 30, it kind of takes a very sudden upturn, and this curve is exactly the same in women. So once you hit a body mass index of 30, the death rate starts to increase much more drastically than below 30. Type 2 diabetes. A lot of people in this country suffer from type 2 diabetes if they're not pre-diabetic, diabetic. And what we know is that obese individuals have a 50 to 100 time increased risk of diabetes in their lifetime. In fact, if someone hits a body mass index of 35, they're already at 6,000% increased risk of diabetes. So what has happened when I said our been doubling our obesity rates every 15 to 20 years, not to depress anybody here, what have been the things to contribute to that in our country at the very least? First, clearly, I'm sorry, they always give me the lunch hour time slot, and I'm always just like, nobody wants to hear this lecture during their lunch hour, but anyway, that's what they give me. So, of course, reason number one is we eat too much. The average American takes in 3,800 calories a day. That sounds like a lot. Most people wildly underestimate how many calories they truly take in on a daily basis. And that's about 500 extra calories per day versus just 20 to 30 years ago. 500 extra calories per day, as some of you may know, is a pound. Would equal 1 pound in 1 week of extra calories that we're ingesting. And the majority of this increase comes from refined carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, and simple sugars, meaning processed foods and sweetened drinks. So claim jumper syndrome, or the increase in portion sizes. If you've ever seen Super Size Me, it's absolutely an accurate movie. What we know about restaurant portion sizes when we go out to eat, that they are about 2 to 5 times larger than the portions we would serve ourselves at home. Okay? The foods tend to be high in sugar, fat, and salt because no one is really going to get addicted to healthy food. Okay, that sounds weird to say, but guess what? There is no such thing as an addiction center in the brain for healthy food. It doesn't work that way. And so people will keep coming back for the pleasurable experiences. And fast food and other restaurants are not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're serving. So again, I'm not going to belabor all the statistics, but Super Size Me really has occurred over the last 25 years. When I was growing up, if you went to McDonald's, say, and you got a soda, it was that little paper cup, and if you didn't drink it fast enough, the straw went through the bottom and started to spill on the table. The bag of fries was the same way. It was like a greasy, papery bag of fries. At this point, and so those things back then were not great foods. The soda was 85 calories. The French fries were 210 calories. These days, your fries come to your table in a UPS-sized cardboard box. 610 calories when they serve you those fries with the extra value meal. That's most people's total calories per meal, but they're serving that just the fries. And the soda has gone from 85 calories up to 250 calories. And we see this all over the place. In fact, if you pause with those Starbucks kind of seasonal drinks, a lot of times what you'll find is they're upwards of 500 to 700 calories. And then you add the 700 calorie bran muffin to it, and man, that is a moving yet very, very unhealthy breakfast that some of us kind of assume is the way to go. So, you know, a lot of times doctors give up, and then someone comes in and says, well, I'm going to just give you a diet pill, and then the patient winds up asking, can you supersize that? So other reasons, well, food is actually relatively, let's put it this way, bad food is cheap, okay? There's an economics of behavior that go on here. The way to get the most calories per penny or most calories per dollar generally comes in those value meals where they throw in the drink and they throw in the fries for an extra 20 cents. A lot of my patients will claim eating healthy is too expensive, and then I tell them, well, you spend over half of your food budget eating outside of the home. It's always going to be more expensive to eat outside of the home than it is going to be to eat at home. And then the other thing I will tell them is, you know, again, there's forest in the trees too. How much do you want to know how much extra you spend on your food, on your medical expenses when you're obese? Not your health plan, but your medical expenses when you're obese. It's about $1,500 a year that someone who's obese is spending extra on their healthcare costs than others. So there's a lot of ways that dollar efficiency doesn't work out in the long run. But again, people have gotten used to making choices like this, unfortunately. And if you think about it, look at all the ads. They're not really advertising to get you in to eat the grilled chicken salad with the apple slices for a side, right? Or your kids. Soda's got a 90% profit margin. Prices are up 20% since 1985. Fresh produce has a 10% profit margin. So do they want you to come in and eat refined foods? Do they want you to come in and eat fresh fruits and vegetables? It's quite clear where the profits are going to be coming from. And the prices for the restaurants have gone up 117%. So, so sometimes I'll tweet McDonald's and say, how could you do this? Didn't you already have enough bad stuff going on? And they'll say, oh, but Dr. Nanda, we serve salads. And then the statistics come out about how much of their sales are actually salads. 3% of McDonald's revenue is generated by salads. So lack of physical activity, as doctor is counseling his patient, the handle on your recliner does not qualify as an exercise machine. Let's put it this way, about 1/3 of people in this country get the recommended, let's say, recommended daily allowance of exercise, which is about 30 minutes 5 times a week of something engaging where you kind of start to breathe hard during your exercise. We have quite a few sedentary people. When we track our Kaiser data, it's at least 1/3 of people are completely sedentary, zero exercise whatsoever. And we use exercise broadly, right? We use exercise for anything that gets you huffing and puffing. We're not necessarily saying you have to be at the rec center on the treadmill to qualify as exercise. So why do I preach to my patients that they should probably consider exercising daily? Well, if you think about it, evolutionarily speaking, we probably did. We probably did walk miles and miles a day to hunt and gather and do those sorts of things. You will burn about 300 calories in half an hour of exercise. Okay, that's not earth-shattering if you're considering that most people are taking in upwards of 3,000 calories. This is why I try to get people to understand who come to me and say, oh, I can't manage my weight because I'm not exercising. And I said, that's part of it, but that's a smaller part of it than you think it is. But what happens is when you burn those 300 calories, for up to 18 hours after that exercise bout, your body, your basal metabolic rate, your metabolism will burn extra calories over that time period. So you generate benefits for 18 hours from a 30-minute exercise bout. Okay? It's really crucial for weight maintenance after weight loss because, as we know, if someone has to lose weight to achieve their proper body weight, their metabolism will go down to where they can only take in about 80% of the calories as someone who never had to lose weight to get to that body weight in the first place. So exercise is really crucial to offset the slowing of the metabolism. So stress. I think you guys said your last lecture was on stress, right? So what we have seen in the medical studies is an inverse relationship between body mass index and mental health, meaning the heavier someone is, the more concordance with things like depression and anxiety we see. This is especially true for women. It's also true on the male side, but it's especially true for women. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of my obese patients tend to be emotional eaters. Stress, anxiety, relationship issues, different things will drive them to make choices in food that they wouldn't otherwise make. And there's an evolutionary reason behind this, okay? It's not an excuse, but it's a reason. So if you watch the Discovery Channel and the lion's chasing the deer and half of you hope he gets it and half of you hope that the deer gets away, they don't ever pan to where that deer goes after the chase is over, right? They kind of just show the lion panting, oh, it'll be another couple weeks before they get a chance. That deer will go to either a stream or a tree to drink or to start to eat leaves. Why? Because eating itself, the process of eating, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest nervous system, that everything is right with the world nervous system versus the fight or flight nervous system, right? So when we're under stress, it's the fight or flight nervous system that's being activated. We don't have to run for our lives, most of us, and we're not ultimate fighters, so we don't have to fight for our lives. So what we wind up doing is turning off that stress system with food and with beverage. So in terms of setups from childhood, the risk of a child becoming obese who had two obese parents is 70 to 90%. Okay? So I guess the hope is that there's 10 to 30% of them that don't have to go that route, and those are the parents and the children that I really try to focus on. And there's a heavy genetic component as well. In fact, you look at twin-twin studies, you see a concordance rate of about 70%. So there's some effective environment, there's some effective genes, and we'll talk about basal metabolism in a little bit. There's a new science, an evolving science that we're just learning about called epigenetics. Anybody here work in healthcare field? No. Epigenetics is how does the soup of the mother's womb affect the baby that's growing in that womb for the 9 months, okay? It's amazing. You would not think that that could have any long-term health effects, and what we know is that with obese women who are obese during going into their pregnancy, their children wind up having an increased rate of obesity and diabetes in their lifetime, separate from their genetic predisposition from mom, because of some of the factors in the amniotic fluid that turn on genes for obesity, that turn on genes for diabetes, where those did not have to be like that if that mother had gone into her pregnancy at a healthy body weight. So just things to think about, and why I'll preach this life plan of taking care of yourself from cradle to grave, because it really does affect every generation. Nature versus nurture. So I'm going to skip through some of this. I think a lot of it's kind of intuitive. We have quite a few families who being obese is the norm, so they don't think that anything is really wrong with that. And lots of families will really. So we're going to have Thanksgiving coming up. And what are we going to do? Let's be honest. We're not going to eat what they're serving there. We're going to eat what our families will serve, which is, large quantities of food and beverages and things like that. And that's just kind of how we celebrate. But if you think about it, it's not just Thanksgiving. If you think about the next time someone in your department has a birthday or an anniversary or something like that, what is in the break room? Is it a fresh fruit platter for everybody? This is the culture of the workplace too, besides just families. It tends to revolve around kind of pleasure foods, if you think about that, right? Not necessarily around healthy foods. Sadly, 77% of children who are obese by age 16 will never make it out of that. They will wind up obese adults, okay? So there's a lot of factors in childhood, and why do I bring this up? Not because you can do anything about your childhood, but you can do something about your kid's childhood or your grandkid's childhood. Accelerated obesity is associated with accelerated weight gain even in the first 6 months. So everybody wants that chubby baby with the big cheeks, and I'm not saying there should be emaciated babies, but what I'm saying is that even in the first 6 months, we can start to trigger things that will wind up in obesity later in life, introducing solids too early and being breastfed less than 1 year correlated. Zip code versus genetic code. It's actually quite sad. Orange County is a pretty glaring example of difference in life expectancy. If you look at the life expectancy in a place like Newport Beach versus somewhere in Santa Ana, those are not that far apart, maybe 10 miles apart. And they have found up to a 16-year difference in life expectancy in some parts of the countries that mimic that kind of socioeconomic differences. So, 53% of our adults in Orange County are overweight or obese. That number is 70% in Santa Ana. So just living there is an independent risk factor for obesity itself. So some dysfunctional engrams that we are taught in childhood. If you don't finish your plate, there's going to be some sort of punishment, right? I mean, I think 30 minutes. I think that we all kind of grew up with those kind of threats. And then there's also the other side, the reward for finishing all the food on your plate. And it's, I think about going to my 4-year-old, the birthday parties that their class has, and it's all these parents hovering over them saying, finish your pizza or you're not going to get any cake, right? And that's kind of like, I don't know, maybe we should just let them regulate the crap that they're going to eat themselves instead of forcing them to eat both of them. Poor parental modeling. So, a lot of things that we will do or our parents will do, and I'm not blaming anybody. This is just kind of cultural, it's societal, generate these emotional contexts to an inanimate object, which is really food. And food didn't really serve any sort of emotional benefit if you look at us through evolution until maybe the last couple thousand years. So other things, we're going to kind of skip through these things, but if you have children, take that in. So government subsidies, so this is where I put on my conspiracy hat, I guess you might say. Using your tax dollars to make crappy food as cheap as possible. And who designed this food pyramid? Trust me, it wasn't the nutritionist that designed this food pyramid that says you need 6 to 11 servings of processed carbohydrates in your diet every day for you to be a healthy adult. And 2 to 4 servings of fruit and 3 to 5 servings of vegetables. That's clearly a broken system, but that came out of the food industry, basically. So what are subsidies? Subsidies eliminate the supply and demand curve. Some people here work in economics. And there's $10 billion per year going towards pushing farmers, well, actually corporations, to produce wheat, soybean, and corn, basically, okay? What they do is they set a floor. They set a floor for the price, so the farmer, the corporation is incentivized to produce as much as possible. Drives down food costs, results in the 99-cent chicken sandwich, which we'll kind of see. So those subsidies are actually working quite a bit against us in terms of the behavioral economics of what we make as choices as consumers. Less than 3% of our farmland is planted with fruits and vegetables versus the majority being planted with those cash crops. So they use those crops to feed not only our livestock, but to fill up our grocery store shelves as well, right? With, again, processed foods from those sources. And what we have seen is that we've seen a 1-to-1 linear increase between when they started those subsidies and our obesity epidemic in this country. So since the 1970s, those subsidies have resulted in a correlating trend with obesity. So now when we go back to those 3,800 calories that we consume a day, 75% of the increase in those calories consumed have come from these cash crops of what we just said, added sugar, added fat, and refined grains. Only 6% of our additional calories that we're taking in now versus 30 years ago come from fruit, and 0% from vegetables. That's kind of sad. What does the NIH do about this? Being do-gooders, they spend $800 million a year to try to fight the obesity epidemic. However, the food industry spends $15 billion a year on food ads. And it makes sense. If you think about it, when have you ever seen a commercial for healthy eating? And how many commercials do you see for fast foods and billboards for fast foods, et cetera, et cetera? So The Matrix, if you remember that movie, actually this is kind of an old statistic that 50% of a kid's waking hours are spent absorbing media. We'll put that in quotes because it can be now anything. It could be Twitter, it could be just smartphone, it could be computer, it could be gaming. Basically, I would say that that's up to like 75-80% of their waking hours. We're awake, on average 16 hours or more, a little bit more per day. Average U.S. household has their TV on for 8 of those hours. So very few people have physically active jobs. I would imagine most people in this room, like myself, probably have a fairly sedentary job. And then you look at kind of our break structure. So we sit there at our computers grinding all the work out, and then, oh, it's a break time, so where do I go? I go to the break room and I just go sit down some more, and then I come back to my sedentary job. So the jobs that are requiring physical activity in our society have dropped to only about one out of 5 jobs require really any significant physical activity. Sleep deprivation. So some people like to burn the midnight oil, and studies show actually smarter people tend to burn the midnight oil more. This is not necessarily good for them. What we find is that people who stay up late eat about 250 calories more per day than people who do not. And people trying to lose weight, they will actually lose more muscle and less fat the less they sleep when they're losing weight. okay? So it completely works against them. And if you sleep deprive subjects to just 4 hours a night, 2 nights in a row, their appetite hormone that triggers hunger goes up by 30%, and their hormone that triggers fullness goes down by 20%, just from sleep restricting people to 4 hours a night. You can actually induce prediabetes in a perfectly healthy 30-year-old by sleep restricting them to 4 hours a night for 30 days straight, prediabetes. So sleep deprivation drives people towards high-calorie, high-carbohydrate, high-fat food choices. So next thing we want to get into, metabolism and hormones. You know, I have a lot of people come in and they say, you know, I have a slow metabolism, and what I'll tell them is there's a 5 to 10% variation across populations in terms of basal metabolic rate. And then there's a lot of ads on the radio, and in fact, the most egregious ones say, women, if you're 40, whether or not you're menopausal, you'll find it impossible to lose your belly fat because of your female hormones. And I'm just like, who are they tapping into, and what sort of nerve are they trying to hit? That's really offensive. But you've seen the wellness clinics around that pump people full of growth hormone, HCG shots, you know, with those 500-calorie diets, those kinds of things. And again, most of these things are just bogus. They don't have any long-term benefit, and in fact, there can be harmful effects. But one of the things that is scientific is insulin resistance. If you carry your weight in the midsection, what happens is your insulin molecule, which actually is important to regulate your blood sugars in your body, starts to become less effective. It becomes lazy, so you start to produce more. Insulin is also a growth hormone molecule, so what it does is it'll fix those sugars, but it's going to store fat right here in the midsection. So the people that start to accumulate weight in the midsection, their insulin gets lazy, they accumulate more fat in the midsection, insulin gets even lazier until this circles to drain into what we call diabesity. And if we can break that cycle by getting people on the right foods and get their exercise going, get them in shape, we can break the cycle of insulin resistance having to lead to diabetes. Denial. So they actually studied women, and it turns out that women lie about their diet 474 times a year. This is a study that they did. And then, well, they didn't really study men, but men ignore their health problems 4,700 times a year, so about 10 times that amount. Once in a while, I will meet people who are truly ignorant of some nutritional concepts. That's true. For instance, I had a patient come in. He was 400 pounds, and he kept saying, "Doc, I'm off soda, I'm off soda, I'm off soda." And I said, "Well, what do you drink?" He's like, 7-Up. And he couldn't understand that because it wasn't colored, that it wasn't full of sugar. So things like that, sometimes I will have to back up the truck and say, well, tell me exactly what you do. And then, again, I always get the budget arguments. Oh, it's too costly to eat healthy. And then I'll see some of my patients, sometimes when I go fill up gas on the way home at the 7-Eleven, buying like a Monster for like $3 and buying like something in there at exorbitant prices, or at Starbucks paying $5 and saying, I can't afford fruits and vegetables. When that's clearly, it just takes some forethought into their finances to do that, to do it correctly. And again, with time priorities, everybody tells me I don't have time to exercise, and we already talked about this phenomenon where we sit at our computer and then we go take a break in the break room and sit in the break room and then we come back and sit at our computer some more. So, there's not going to be a magic formula. Everybody seems to be waiting around for a magic formula. And what I will tell people is, and again, this is where they get lost in the forest industry. They say, Doc, I'm doing this and this and this. I say, is the scale going in your right direction? And if they say no, then I say Albert Einstein's definition of insanity is what? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That doesn't make any sense. So if the scale's not going in your direction, you need to change the game plan and do something different, okay? Sometimes needing to retool completely. You want to see that again? Can I go back? There we go. So you can probably see the bag that he has in his hand. No comment. So are we designed to store fat? Absolutely. Are we designed to be obese? Absolutely. Having 24 hours a day of drive-thrus available is really the worst possible thing if you think about how we evolved as creatures. We evolved in times of feast and famine. This is why you have a stomach, by the way. You know that your intestinal tract is basically a long series of tubes except for one part, your stomach. Your stomach is a floppy bag, okay? And what it is it's a holdover from evolution where you had to, when you had food available, eat as much as you can to store it in that bag to keep you sustained for the next week before food will come available again. It took an immense amount of calories to even get calories into our diet, and that's just not true anymore. And the things that we can get addicted to in terms of sugar, fat, salt, again, you may have read about that, those are rare tastes in nature. I mean, think about nature and what in nature, and we'll talk about bananas and how monkeys can get addicted to bananas, but what in nature is really very sweet? What in nature is very salty? What in nature is very fatty, except for animal carcasses? Not much, not much. So when we did evolve, if we did get a taste of those things, they became very powerful dopaminergic stimuli to go for those things again. There are no genes that tell us stop eating when you're full, because if there were, nobody would be sitting in this room today. Those people cooking, you guys eating, me, none of us would be here today if there were genes to say, stop, you're full, don't eat anymore. This is all a cerebral concept. That would not be favorable for survival. So our brains are truly wired for food addiction. We have food addiction models where we see opioids being released into the brain from exposures to things like bananas. The problem with food addiction, and again, food addiction, I'm not going to get into it right now, but other addictions, you can go cold turkey. How do you cold turkey food, right? It's really not possible. So people who suffer from food addiction are always managing, just trying to skate by where they're in control of the addiction's not in control of them. So this is very, very difficult, very different than cigarettes and smoking and alcohol. So again, conspiracy theories. How much time do I got?
You've got 20 minutes.
Okay. This is my big pet peeve, that I think the way the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial, agricultural, this giant complex has a vested financial interest in keeping us alive for as long as possible, but in a sick, diseased state, okay? So what are we talking about? Well, obviously, you already know that half of this grocery store pharmaceutical aisle is lined with diet pills and things supposed to help you lose weight. Well, if those things work, I mean, would I have a job? No, I wouldn't have a job. But again, they keep selling people these health in a bottle. That doesn't work, okay? Drug companies benefit a great deal from keeping people, whether they're diabetic or cancer patients, they have a great vested interest in keeping people alive but sick. Just sick enough where they can keep them on their medications, keep the insurance paying for medications, but that they don't die, because there goes their source of revenue, okay? The weight loss industry, where, what they say is most people will cycle with their weight. But guess what? Every time someone's doing a program where they've cycled and gained it back, that's revenue being generated for places like Lindora, Jenny Craig, et cetera. We've already talked about the fast food industry and the agricultural industry. And remember, by agriculture, it's very different than we were talking about 50 years ago. There are very few farmers. I mean, you guys have a farmer's market, so you know them. You know the very few farmers that are in this geographical area. Most agriculture now is run by these large corporations with shareholders in stock, okay? So I just don't want you, because you work here, to assume that the farmer's market is really generalizable to where our food sources come from. That's actually quite rare. Large corporations run the majority of the farmland in the United States of America. And then, of course, healthcare industry. It's amazing when you look at how much a vascular surgeon will get paid to do a diabetic foot amputation versus someone to start here and prevent someone from becoming obese, from becoming diabetic, from becoming a badly controlled diabetic to getting their amputation in the first place. So the whole cost structure is turned on its head in terms of interventions, and that's just an ass-backwards way to take care of people and to maintain our health. So what I'll teach my patients is, there's things out of your control, but don't play the victim to those things. Take control of your situation. The model that has been generated of just sending people for short-term meal planning to a dietitian is clearly a broken structure. I don't tell my physicians to do that. That's not successful. And again, neither is just telling you, eat less and exercise more. That's not a realistic plan for getting anybody healthy. That's a nice thing to say. But unless people have a realistic pathway for getting them to a place with health, that's just not it. So what are the keys? And I've tried to boil it down to just 4 things for successful health and weight maintenance. Have active goals, have a plan, Try changing the culture where the culture needs to be changed. And the most important thing, when you look at the difference between the 93% of people that will not manage their weight successfully once they lose some weight and the 7% of people who do, the most important difference is the people that do have a permanent, regular structure. And I tell my patients like this. Do you get your credit card bill every month? Yes. What if you got your credit card bill just every December 31st and that was it? You got one bill for the year. Do you think your household finances would be in good shape? And they're like, no, that would be crazy. I'd probably have to declare bankruptcy every single year. And I tell them it's really no different. It's just the intervention frequency when it comes to weight management with someone who struggled with their weight happens to be a weekly to bi-weekly intervention as opposed to a monthly bill. Okay? And that's basically a multimodal, generally a dietitian-led group with a weigh-in and with some education involved as well. So goal setting. Again, you wouldn't just get in your car and just drive. You get in the car and you drive where you have a destination. And it doesn't really take getting out there and all of a sudden starting to hit these elliptical machines for an hour every single day. If you're not already exercising, start small, work your way up, right? So the first week I'll tell my patients maybe just go for a walk 20 to 30 minutes a couple times a week. The next week, try to make it to 5, and the next week, try to make it every day to help them kind of build some confidence that they're not going to hurt themselves, that they're not going to have a heart attack. Everybody says, oh, I don't know if I should start exercising. I'm so unhealthy. I think I'm going to have a heart attack. I thought, you will have a heart attack if you don't start exercising. So that's not, it's kind of, they think the opposite. And again, exercise is really, I qualify by anything that gets you breathing hard. I know some people have to go. Don't worry. You can go ahead and sneak out. I'm going to keep going. Goal setting. So what I tell people is, if you're struggling with your weight, set a weight loss goal of 1 to 2 pounds a week. It keeps you accountable for something realistic, something reasonable. And for a lot of people, they can achieve a 5 to 10% body weight loss within 3 to 6 months. And then they can set their lifelong goal of getting down to a healthy body weight. But even 5 to 10% mitigates risks of things like diabetes, stroke, heart attack, high blood pressure, etc. Okay? So I will tell my patients, you have to have a plan. Don't get up in the morning and just go to work. That's not a plan for how you're going to manage your nutrition and your health and your best health effectively. Get up, have something high in protein with breakfast, whether it's a shake, egg white omelet, Greek yogurt with some blueberries, something like that. Pack your lunch. This is extremely important with those of us that have a lot of stress in our lives, because if you're going to run over to In-N-Out or to Carl's or to somewhere from here and pick up something that you know you have 15 minutes to go get, you're not going to come back with the healthiest, generally speaking, you're not going to come back with the healthiest choices if you're under stress. So what we want to do is don't leave it to chance what you're going to wind up eating for lunch. Bring it with you, okay? I tell my patients, bring your bag to work, bring your eating plan to work in a bag with you. Exercise. So what I will also get a commitment from the people that I work with is, give me when you are going to exercise, not if you're going to exercise. Tell me if you're going to do before work, after work, or during work. And a lot of people, you're surprised, they will do it during work because they will take a 15-minute break and they will go for a walk. They'll take a 15-minute break later and go for a walk. And they'll say, but I need to eat too. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll try to get them on one meal replacement a day, for instance, like a protein shake or something, so they can go get their exercise, not burn their whole break going and sitting down and eating their food. Dinners, it generally, I try not to make it complicated. I tell them, half your plate lean protein, half your plate vegetables, just like you guys were serving here. That looked very, very healthy. Don't leave serving dishes on the table because we're just rats. If there's food there, we will keep going. We don't have that shutoff valve that tells us it takes about 15 to 30 minutes for that signal to hit the brain to say stop. And some people who are super, super busy, I tell them, well, make what you want to eat during the week on Sundays, and then just keep that in the freezer and kind of take it out piecemeal as you need to. Never, ever, ever go to Costco when you're hungry. Has anybody gone to Costco when they're hungry? I have gone to Costco. It's a disaster, both for my wallet and for my waistline. Because you know that you're going to wind up picking up things that don't belong in your cart. Same thing applies to the grocery store. It's just we're driven by these choices when we're hungry. And I'll teach my patients, empty the processed carbohydrate crap out of your pantry, because that's generally where most of those items are going to be. And don't bring unhealthy snacks into the house. And this is especially true for grandparents, okay? So if you're a parent or a grandparent, I had to train my mom not to bring cupcakes every time she came to watch the kids. I had to train her, Mom, you went through a weight loss program yourself. You're doing all these healthy things yourself. I don't want you to love my kids with ice cream and cupcakes, et cetera, et cetera. love them with food, love them with love them with playing with them, love them with education, love them with a lot of things, but not unhealthy snacks. And so she's kind of picked up on that concept, which was very different than how we grew up. And I'll teach my patients and my parents, always have healthy, ready-to-go fruits and vegetable snacks available in the fridge, and we'll keep from going for those things that are unhealthy. Eating out. And I hate when people say you can't eat out. You have a weight problem. You can't eat out. That's like telling a teenager, well, your birth control is what? Abstinence, right? Well, okay, you can say that. Is that really the most effective? Well, again, that's a moral issue. But what I would tell my patients is, you can go eat out, but guess what? There's 5% of the menu that's going to work for you, and there's 95% of the menu that's there designed to get you addicted so that you come back to Cheesecake Factory again the next time when you're walking through the spectrum, right? So what I'll say is you got a couple choices. You go with protein and vegetable, or you go with salad with chicken or fish, some vinaigrette dressing, skip the dessert, limit the alcohol. Before you go to Thanksgiving this time, if it's not at your house, you're not the one cooking, what I will teach my patients, I'll say eat before you go. And yes, there's that kind of rough edge where there's 40 people and someone's going to come and say, well, your plate wasn't full. Oh, you haven't had a third plate yet. You didn't like my yams? Things like that. But the thing is, you can always say, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And just kind of avoid those conversations or say, you know what, I'm just eating healthier. So I'll teach my patients, eat some protein before you wind up going to family gatherings. And when you go there, just nibble there. And again, try to nibble on the things that are high in fiber, high in antioxidants, and protein as opposed to use empty carbohydrates. And the thing is, so imagine if I had a plate of food here, you're all looking at the screen, I could just dump it here and you wouldn't know if I threw food in there or not, or if I threw an empty plate or not. And this is what Oprah calls the clean plate club, right? That we're ingrained, that we have to finish everything on our plate because society binds us to this contract. No, it doesn't bind us to that contract. It's okay to throw away food. But again, we're kind of trained to finish our plates. Change your culture. So this can happen at the home or this can happen at the workplace, okay? If you have people who want to go walk at your workplace, make a group together and go. If there's 5 people in the group, even if one person's not down that day, the other 4 will lean on and say, are you sure? You sure you want to come? And kind of peer pressure them into going. You can also practice this at home. Limit desserts, eat meals together as a family, limit the TV time, go shopping as a family, take the children and show them, let them pick out their fruits and vegetables, let them make those healthy choices, take the family, for active events as opposed to passive events. When people come over to your house, serve healthy food, because guess what? You guys all showed up today not because of me. You didn't even know I was coming, probably. You showed up today because there's free food back there. You weren't going to turn down anything that was back there, right? They could have served you cheeseburgers. They could have served you fries and milkshakes, and you probably still would have eaten it because it was free. I hope not, but you probably still would have eaten it because it's free. But people are coming over to your house, they're hungry, they're expecting a meal. Feed them. They're not going to leave because you're serving healthy food and say, oh, how dare you, I'm out of here, I'm going to go to McDonald's and come back. They're not going to do that. People are generally pretty lazy and they'll eat whatever you put in front of them. So, again, if you have control over things like bathrooms and vending machines, and I'm talking about your workplace culture, try to get them to replace the vending machines that have the sodas and the unhealthy snacks in there with something that's non-calorie beverages and healthy snacks. How are we doing, Tim?
Doing fine.
Okay. Okay, so we talked about why 85% of dieters fail with long-term weight management, because the only studies showing success are people who are engaged in that weekly to bi-weekly support structure. And this could be things like Weight Watchers, TOPS, Overeaters Anonymous. I've got Kaiser programs. If I have any time left, I'll talk about at the end. And some people can actually pull this off online. I don't have a tremendous amount of success with that, but it is studied. Why? Because no one is perfect. And so my mom went through a weight loss program, and she goes to the weekly meetings now. And she'll say, "Why is it so important that I go back every week? I think I kind of know what to do." And I'll say, "Mom, because guess what? Those times when you're weak, those times when you're not on track, you can only screw up for 6 days in a row before you got to go weigh in, and you got to own it to that dietitian that's known you for months and months and months, who wants to make sure that you're successful." And part of that is, again, a social contract of joining a weight management program that really, really works. And that really is the main differentiator between people who gain their weight back and who don't. Okay? So I'll teach my patients to enjoy healthy eating as opposed to focusing on portion control. It drives me crazy that I mean, I hate to say, I hope nobody in here is a dietitian trained in an ivory tower, but to say, here's my palm. Eat a serving of meat the size of my palm. That is the least appetizing thing I have ever heard in my life, to eat a palm size of meat. What I'll tell people is, eat the right foods. You don't have to worry about portion control that much. Look, so one Starbucks scone, 460 calories, 5.5 cups of blueberries. Who the heck eats 5.5 cups of blueberries, right? You'd probably be pooping blue if you do that. But again, when you're eating the right foods, you don't have to worry so much about the size of the food on your plate. Okay? So when I teach my patients about healthy carbohydrates, I will say, please go to town on fruits and vegetables, 5 to 9 servings a day, and I will give them a yellow light with what the processed stuff that we talked about for that are the main drivers of the weight problem in this country, when we're talking about things like bread and pasta and tortillas, etc. And then I will really, really red light them with again, things like soda, sugared beverages, white bread, and such and such. Protein, again, protein hits a satiety center in the brain that carbohydrates and fat do not. So fish, chicken, lean dairy, lean turkey, vegetarian sources of protein, you know, are like beans and tofu. Healthy fats, small amount of healthy fats. People probably don't want to hear it, but yes, you can eat too much avocado. You know what a serving of avocado is? It's 1/8 of an avocado. Who has ever eaten 1/8 of a serving of avocado with that guacamole bowl at El Torito? Nobody. So again, these things that you have to be very, very cognizant of. Seeds, nuts, especially. 1 can of almonds like this that you can get at the grocery store. I love those habanero ones, habanero flavored ones. 1,660 calories, wipes out 5 days of exercise for that person who's trying to manage their body weight. So you have to be very cognizant of some of these things that are really high in fats. They're not unhealthy, they're unhealthy in certain quantities. And then I will always, always, always tell my patients, if you believe, whatever your beliefs are, there are no calorie beverages on this planet. They were not put here before you got here. They will not be here after you leave. And so why are you drinking any of your calories? The studies show you're going to eat the same amount of calories whether you have a calorie-free beverage or a calorie beverage. And so some of the things my patients will come in, they'll say, oh, but I don't drink sugar, I drink juice. And I'll be like, oh. And then I'll show them this and I'll say, look, there's 14 teaspoons of sugar in that Welch's orange juice thing. That's only 16 ounces. I said, if you were at the coffee machine at work and someone put 16 teaspoons of sugar in their cup of coffee, would you think that person is normal? Or would you think that person is clinically insane? You would say that they're insane. But this is what's served in the drinks, okay? Snapple. Some of my patients think Snapple is like fruit. And I say, no, it is not fruit. Soda, 20 ounces of soda, 16.5 teaspoons of sugar. And again, this is where I warn people over the holidays, be careful with those special drinks at Starbucks, the pumpkin, vanilla, mocha, you know, those kind of things. This is a light one, 380 calories. I've seen things as high as 500, 600, 700 calories at Starbucks. So I'll teach my patients, do not drink your calories, please. Okay? Watch your labels. If the scale is not moving, there's a couple of ways to address this problem. Studies show that people who track do better than people who don't track. I'm a little bit skewed on that because I think people will track in the short term. It's rare that I meet people who are willing to track everything they put in their mouth and every time they move their legs in the longest term. So again, I tried to get them on the idea of making this intuitive. What foods do I eat? And that I need some activity in my life as opposed to having to track every single day. But calorie tracking does work. Lose It is a great app if you have a smartphone and you're looking for something because you want to start to track calories and start to track exercise and goals. So I'll tell my patients about that. There's a ton of, I'm not even going to go over these. There's a ton of online websites for supporting people's weight loss efforts. There's a lot of support resources. The rabbit hole goes very, very deep in some of my patients that I work with on their weight. Some of the people who struggle the most are victims of abuse. People who were sexually and physically abused in the past, and it's a protective mechanism to be big, and it's really, really hard to get them to be aware of what it is. I say I can't undo your damage. All I can do is make you aware of why you subconsciously slip and make some bad choices sometimes. So nickel and diming works. Sometimes what I'll talk to my patients who don't want to make a lot of changes, I'll say that's okay. You're going to get immense health benefits if I can just take off 10% of your body weight, which for most obese people is only 20 or 30 pounds. And what I'll say is, all my goal is for you is that I want to generate a 250 calorie deficit from what you're doing today. That will help us lose 2 pounds a month. And they say, Dr. Nanda, I did not pay $30 to come see Kaiser's weight loss specialist for 2 pounds a month of weight loss. I'm out of here and I want a refund of my copay. And I'll say, I'll sign that off, but before you leave, when was the last year that you lost 24 pounds and kept it off? And they'll say, well, never. And I'll say, if you do what I'm telling you to do as far as minimal changes, 250 calories a day, you will lose 24 pounds this year. There's your 10% of your body weight. If you change 500 calories per day between exercise and diet, that's 50 pounds in 1 year. So this is kind of like where you put money away for your retirement. It kind of compounds itself, and little changes can work up into large cumulative results. So again, what I generally like to, I'm sorry I went really fast because there were so many things to cover. I hope that if anybody was here on the 1 to 3 scale, 0 to 3 scale, that we've moved you over towards the other end of the ruler, that yes, I can use some simple direct concepts to apply to be successful. But again, what I will tell you is there's 2 things you have to consider. Weekly maintenance meetings will help you be successful, and that you can consume 20% less calories at a healthy body weight if you had to lose weight to get there than someone who just never had to lose weight to get there. So if anybody I'm going to go over this very, very briefly. I've got Kaiser programs that are available to both Kaiser and non-Kaiser. One is called Lifestyle Weight Management. It's a nutrition overview. It introduces these long-term programs that we have. We have a non-meal replacement program called 12-Week Slim Down that's $16 a week, exactly what we said. The dietitian helps guide. You can come in and say, I'm a lacto, ovo, no vaccination, no water person, and that's what I want my diet to be. And the dietitians will help people shape and cut their diet so that they achieve their weight loss goals. There's a cognitive behavioral topic, whether it's stress or relationships or nutrition or exercise, every single week for 12 weeks, and then it rolls into that weekly support structure for free, for life, once a week with that dietitian who was teaching that class in the beginning. And our patients just keep coming, and that's the way they keep losing weight and they keep the weight off. We have another program called the Flexible Low-Calorie Diet, partial meal replacement, average weight loss about 20 to 21 pounds in 16 weeks, free maintenance for life. And then we've got the medical weight loss program that I run, which the average weight loss is about 48 pounds for men, 35 pounds for women. And we will take people as old, we will take 80-year-old dialysis patients. I mean, the sickest of the sick, I will take them because I'm medically managing their conditions. And usually what we can do is we can get them off a lot of their medications. So that, in a nutshell, is the Kaiser program that we have available. And I just wanted to put that out there for anybody who might be interested in that. And with that, I will take questions.